Hello, 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 good people. Today I have a lecture for you on perspective and environment sketching. All right, let's dive in today. You will also have a quiz after, and the assignment will be in the chat as well as emailed to you with the lesson plan and the PowerPoint from this lecture. All right, so let us begin. Last class, we talked about thumbnail sketches, lighting. Uh, Now we are on to perspective and how it affects your concept and how to use it, how to, you know, kind of effectively understand the 1 point, 2 point, 3 point perspectives. These are the basic ones that you'll have to know and will greatly improve your understanding of concept. All right, let us dive in. All right, so perspective and environment sketching, concept art 2. Let's begin. All right. So when we talk about perspective drawing, perspective painting, we're talking about how our eyes generally work, right? That's the big thing about perspective is um, it helps create believable depth inside of environments. It guides the viewer's eye and strengthens compositions. It also establishes scale and proportion. It can also add immersion and storytelling to concept art. So we've got these three main perspectives that we usually use, and they do give us really good senses of scale, helps with composition stuff as well. All right. So, in our regular experience, our eyes are constantly in motion, moving over and around objects and through ever changing environments. Through this constant scanning, we build a wealth of data, which is then manipulated and processed by our minds to form our understanding or perception of the visual world. All right. So, throughout time, right? Um, the idea is that what we're doing is we're seeing stuff and we're trying to represent it as best we can. And we have evolved the way we've done that over time. And any kind of drawing you see, right, will never be a full representation of the object you're seeing, right? You're going to use the skills that you have, the tools that you have, right, and your abilities to render or recreate it as close as you can, depending on even cultural norms, right? Depending on what's culturally available at the time. Right, think about back in the cave painting days, right? The only medium they had was like charcoal and horse fat and shit like that, versus later when we started making like egg wash paints and different things like that. And then the Renaissance, the people from the Renaissance era kind of pioneered different techniques to get proportion, composition right, and they really studied human anatomy and form and tried to bring that to life. And then we went through like surrealism, expressionism, pointillism, like different artistic modes, right, different artistic styles throughout time that all is just our interpretation, our expression from what we see, right? That's the main point. So these mental images of the world can never be an exact one for one correspondence with what is experienced, right? Our perceptions are holistic and amalgamation, right? Like we see, you know, think about everything you're seeing right now, right? Like you see color, you see line, you see shape, you see association, symbolism with what you're seeing, and these are essential forms, and there's just infinite meaning in some of the things you see, right? Like just based on your experience, how you were raised, where you were raised, your culture, your environment, your parents, the shit you've watched on TV, right? These all of these things, right? They form our perception of what things are and how we can express them. So our perception of even simple objects like a table is impossible to express completely, right? Like I have a guitar on my wall, right? Like I can give you crayons and you'll depict it and it'll look very childish. And I can give somebody else markers and they can depict it and it'll look, they might have a pointillism and they might use dots to create it. So we are all using our visual cues, our symbolism, our history, our past to inform a lot of these decisions. So any expression of our experience must be limited and partial, right? Like there's never going to be a complete 100% accurate representation of whatever it is you're seeing. What we're doing is we're interpreting our world. We're interpreting the things we see. We're interpreting these objects, these people, these places, these things, and we're using our skills, however finite they might be, whatever objects we may have, crayons, mediums, chalk, charcoal, whatever we have, to then express that. All right. And when you look at different types of art, like think about, like I was saying, the table. You know, if you look at the way Van Gogh paints a table versus how a Renaissance master would paint a table, it might be different because they're trying to express different things, right? And that's the beauty of a lot of this is like, what ultimately can and will be expressed is affected by various limitations we self-impose or is imposed on us by culture. Some decisions are conscious, some are not. Consider these different sets of information about the table. They express the table differently, but each of this is correct, right? Like this is a table, right? This person is using an isometric designed to represent the table. This is an image or a picture of the table. This is a pixel art image of the table. This is a 2D drawing of the table that would show you how to diagram and build it out. All of these are correct interpretations of a table, right? That's the idea, is that like, yes, you know, somebody says table, but then you can express it in all of these different ways, right? All of these are still tables, but they're all expressed in different styles, different manners, right? This one's almost like an elevation. This one's like an isometric. This one's a pixel. This one's a picture. So this is what the beauty of art and what we can do as humans is like, we have this ability to make things simple or as complex as possible, right? And we're always trying to convey this type of information, and how you convey the information is very, very important, right? So one of the techniques, right, the reason that I'm giving you this back spiel is because, well, this is one aspect of conveying that information, which is linear perspective, right? 1 point perspective, 2 point perspective, 3 point perspective. They're all ways, they're all manners in which artists use to convey information. So linear perspective is a technique for representing three-dimensional space on a two-dimensional surface, paper, digital canvas, whatever it may be. This method was invented during the Renaissance, when artists were trying to draw as realistically as possible. It's a mathematical system to show depth realistically. Linear perspective is based on the way the human eye sees the world. Things that are closer to us appear larger, and things that are farther away appear smaller. To create this illusion, the artist creates a vanishing point on the horizon line, right? The things that are seen face on, which means you are looking at the front of them directly, are shown in 1 point perspective with a single vanishing point. All right? Single vanishing point, face on, right? All of the lines recede to that single vanishing point. If we have 2 point perspective, we've got 2 points now, right? This is our horizon line, right? And now when we have our vanishing lines here, they all converge at that point. And then 3-point perspective, depending on where you're doing worm's eye view, which means you're almost like on the ground. And then you've got bird's eye 3-point view, which means you're really high in the sky. And that's the difference between those two. All right. So the core concept of perspective are you've got the horizon line, right, which is the viewer's eye level, right? Then you've got your vanishing point where the parallel lines converge. So these points, these are the vanishing points. And then you've got 1-point perspective, which is a single vanishing point. 2-point perspective, which is 2 vanishing points on the horizon, 1, 2. And then you have your lines that help you denote where your lines are going to meet, right? There's also 3-point perspective as well. So when you talk about 1-point perspective, you've got your 1 point. I just want to hammer this home. You have 1 point on your horizon line, right? And then your lines, right, all converge at that single vanishing point. That's the easiest way I can get you guys to kind of understand that concept. 2-point perspective is a similar concept where as you have 1 point, you can plot these points anywhere, right? If you build a grid, draw a line, you can plot these points anywhere and then use those points to draw out your vanishing lines. That's what I call them. I call these, well, I don't call them that. That's what they're called. Let me not take credit for something somebody did back in the day. I don't call them. They're called vanishing lines, right? And these lines, they vanish at the vanishing point, right? You've got your point right here and the lines go to them. And then you've got your 3-point perspective. Boom. 1, 2, and then 3, right? The vanishing point, and then you got your vanishing lines that converge at wherever those points are. And if you keep this consistent, you will have a consistent, accurate drawing or representation of whatever it is you're trying to do. All right? So what you can do is with the eye level, right, when you're looking at things at eye level, which is usually just saying that, hey, that's the height of the camera. So the angle changes depending on the direction of the camera. Camera is in a high position and looking down versus worm's eye view. So bird's eye versus worm's eye view. So you're looking up. And these give you a lot of sense of drama, right? When you're dealing with single vanishing point, you're thinking hallways, right? You're thinking of a room, right? Very static shot. When you're thinking of 2-point perspective, think, the corner of a street, the end of a street or something like that. You can get these 2 buildings that converge. You can have very interesting kind of scapes and large structures, or you can have think about like a giant mech, like standing in between, like a giant street or something like that, right? Just because of how you can play with perspective and how you can play with these vanishing points, you can put large scale things in tight spaces or small things in large spaces. And that's the idea of getting your vanishing points, understanding your 1, 2, and 3-point perspective is because then you can scale things appropriately. All right. So when we talk about 1-point perspective, it uses 1 vanishing point all the way back there, and it's usually for corridors, hallways, straight roads. It creates a strong sense of focus because it's kind of leading you down. It's like, all right, they're usually very beautiful as well, right? So it's a very beautiful, serene because it's almost symmetrical. So it gives you this sense of peace. It can also be a little eerie depending on what you've put down the corridor. So it definitely invokes a certain sense of emotion. It's great for interiors and linear compositions. Right, so we can go from these dramatic hallway shots when you're getting these 1-point perspective. You just get these leading lines, and it's really good for directing your viewer's attention. So your attention is going boom straight down the hallway, boom straight down that hallway, right? And that's the idea of the 1-point perspective. Right now, if you put a character or something right here, now we're focusing on the character because now they're superimposed in front of us in this super symmetrical uh, um, composition. All right, it's a really good compositional trick if you want. If you go outside or something, you're like, all right, I'm struggling for a composition. Well, look for a single vanishing point, maybe a hallway, maybe a street, like a set of street lights, a set of flower bushes or something like that, and you can get that like that symmetry going along that 1 point perspective. You'll always get a good composition out of that. All right, jumping into 2 point perspective. So 2 point perspective uses two vanishing points, and it's common for cityscapes and architecture, creates very dynamic angles. So think about, like, imagine if you wanted to do something cool, like you could put like a mech right here leaning on the building or something, like a transformer, giant transformer standing there, or something scaling, some giant monster scaling the building or something like that. So it's good for streets, plazas, or dramatic viewpoints. And that's why, when I think of drama and giant cityscapes, I think, what's that ape that swipes at the plane, and then I think of mechs. That's my brain. Sorry. Yeah, so it's very good for shots like this. All right, it's and these are very popular for architectural firms to do. For some reason, a lot of firms that I've worked for, they this is like the the mother of all shots, right? This like 2 point perspective, corner meets, like we used to get a lot of this requested whenever we were working. So I remember that when I was working at Corgan Media Lab. It was an architecture firm, still is. I don't know why I said was. It's an architecture firm, and they used to get really good shots like this. All right. So 3 point perspective is three vanishing points, and two on the horizon, one either above or below, which usually gives you, like I said, that bird's eye view or worm's eye view. All right, and it's used for dramatic and dynamic views. So how vertical lines converge for realism, and its application is in architecture, comics, and cinematic shots. All right, so you can get, these are like kind of 3 point perspective. One down here, boom, 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 and then here. So we've got our three different ones, and then this one has multiple converging lines. All right, so this is our perspective conversation. Then I'm going to dive into a little 3D just to show you what they look like in three-dimensional space. So, we're going to use some simple blocks. You're going to import them into your Photoshop files, and then you can use those blocks to kind of generate yourself some, interesting drawings and stuff like that. So that's usually a good way that you can practice, is you'll make some 3D cubes or something like that, and then you can bring that into Photoshop, and it'll help you keep your lines consistent because, right, as you can see where the lines are. So if you start with one perspective line, you know that it's going to be accurate, and your drawings will then be much more accurate. All right, from then on. So some common mistakes people do make when doing perspective drawings is they have crooked or tilted horizon lines. So like if your horizon line is a little crooked or off, your buildings and your everything you put on top of it is going to be kind of crooked and off, right? If you have misaligned vanishing points, that could really mess up your lines, because then your vanishing points aren't going to line up particularly well, right? If you have too flat or too shallow composition, right, you're not going to get any real perspective work there, because you're not going to be able to see it. So if you're just doing something that's like super face on, it's going to be hard to see what your perspective is doing. All right, so ignoring scale relationship between objects. It can be a fun exercise to make giant things in small spaces and small things in giant spaces, but if you want an apple or a bowl of fruit to look like they're on the table, you want to pay attention to your scale and the ratio that you're giving to your object. So, and not keeping perspective lines visible during the sketch phase. So you want to keep them available for yourself to see and check your work, essentially. But when you do that, It makes it so that your work is more consistent and you don't kind of mess up and forget where this line goes or that line goes or anything like that. So keep that in mind. So you've got an assignment, an exercise to do. It's already posted in Brightspace. You guys should be able to see that. And so, I just want you guys to keep in mind that perspective is super important because it is the foundation of pretty much all environment design and understanding how perspective works. If you understand the rules, then you can break the rules, right? But if you want to break the rules and you don't understand the rules, you're going to have a hard time making your environments look believable. So you want to master horizon lines and vanishing points to bring your worlds to life. Next step, combine perspective with mood, lighting, and details for storytelling power. Right now, if you start to take some of the mood paintings and the things that we've been talking about in the previous classes, add it to some of your perspective training, you'll be well on your way. All right. So let's take a look at and I also included the sources for this lecture in this chat. So let's take a look at um, so this image here, it's easy for you guys to know. We got all these lines converging. This is 1 point perspective, right? 2 point perspective, we've got a bunch of lines converging. Boom. These goes here, this goes there, this goes there. And then the third camera, this is 3 point. 1, 2, and 3. This one goes up and down. That's why we can see the bottom a little bit. It's because we're on the floor. We're like worm eye level. Or you can take this camera, all right, that's another version of 3 point view, 3 point perspective. So that's all the perspectives. I'm gonna take pictures of this and I'll post this in the chat as well for you guys. So as the examples. All right. So that is it for this class. I hope you guys are getting as much use of this class as possible. Don't forget to check on the quiz for this lecture. I look forward to seeing you guys on either Wednesday or Thursday. I think it's Wednesday, and yeah, we will go from there. I'll check the progress of your work and I'll give you feedback as well. All right, it's your boy Ty. It's the Concept Art 2, and I look forward to seeing you guys soon. Keep drawing, guys. Don't stop.